Very much our pleasure to welcome you this
Thank you
afternoon.
very much. Thank you very much, Anne. That was wonderful. Just quick check, can everybody hear me if I speak like that? Excellent. You will notice that I'm shaking. It's not that you terrify me that much, just a little bit. I'm on lithium for the bipolar, and it's a side effect. So please don't get distracted by it's awful. I use two hands often. So, some of you were here. How many of you were here for the first speech this afternoon? Excellent. You'll notice when I get to that point, I reiterate some of the same things that speaker mentioned. But she said it's great to repeat things because we often don't remember the first time round. I want to thank very much Anne and Diane. Diane, where are you? Williams. Anne is disappearing. Here's Diane Williams. Thank you so much for the invitation. And thank you all for coming. Three people I need to acknowledge. Tami, where are you? My daughter. Tami, way in the back. You'll hear from her in a minute. Tim, you'll notice wandering around with a camera. There was one here. Did I knock it off already? No, he took it away. We're just making a video of me, not of you guys, only backs of heads, if anything, for my YouTube channel and my website. It sounds very, very grand. And last but not least, standing right at the back, looking elegant and calm as usual, my old friend Anne Vranner, who is here representing Friends for Mental Health, which, if you don't know, is a local organization based in Beaconsfield that supports caregivers and family members of people like me who have mental illnesses of one kind or another. We encourage you to speak to Anne at the end if any of you need support in that sense. Very good. Quick icebreaker. Show of hands. I'm a nursing student. Oh my God. Okay. Let's go the other way. Show of hands. I am not a nursing student at Jack. Very good. What about I am not associated with Jack in any way? In other words, I'm a guest from outside. Good, and me, myself. Okay, so it's really a Jack nursing event. What about I have heard of bipolar disorder? Great. So it used to be called what? What's the old name for bipolar? Manic depressive disorder. Thank you. I know someone with bipolar. A lot of us. In fact, all of us, because here I stand. You don't know me very well, but maybe by the end of the session you will. So that's amazing. It's being more and more spoken about, and that's really what Bell Let's Talk is all about. Talking more about mental illness, getting rid of the stigma, and as I'm adding these days, let's talk also about the lack of services for people with mental health problems. It's not always easy to get the care that we need. Half of my signature story was said by Anne. Yes, I'm a nurse, trained in South Africa, that's where I was born, got my PhD in adult education and public health, moved to Canada, have 5 children, one of whom is standing there, and started working in the far north and the Arctic with First Nations and Inuit communities as a public health consultant. Then in 2008, like bang, out of the blue, after a family stress, bipolar struck. I was 51 years old, so yes, I was menopausal, but this was just, I had no idea that I was susceptible. Needless to say, I was completely derailed. As I say in my book, I was disappeared from the stage of my life. If this was my life, I was way off there in the wings behind that barrier in my little bubble, bipolar bubble. When I finally got better, I wrote a memoir called Mad Like Me, Travels in Bipolar Country, and that's the book that Tami will sell at the end if anyone's interested. It's now my mission to talk about bipolar and other mental illnesses and to encourage everyone to take care of their own mental health. Because if it could happen to me, friends, it can happen to you. Can you repeat after me? It could be me. You don't believe me, right? You're too young and beautiful right now. But I'm telling you, friends, it could be you. And that's why I'm here, to try and wake you up a little bit. I'm still trying to wake my own daughter up. She thinks she's invincible. There's such a thin line. Imagine a line here down the center of the room. Mental health on this side and mental illness on the other. The minute you cross that line from your mental health into mental illness, to claw your way back over that line takes more energy than you can even imagine. It's a huge, huge struggle. So please do what you can to stay on the right side of that line. It's too thin. So, quick overview of where I'm going today. 3 parts. Number 1 is going to be, what does it feel like to have bipolar? And of course there's depression and there's mania. We'll talk about both. And Tami will give her experiences of dealing with me in both states. Second, how can we boost our own mental health immunity? As nurses, you all understand the concept of immunity. We need to do that for ourselves. And finally, some key takeaways for the end, followed by questions, answers, comments, and then time for visiting Friends for Mental Health booth at the back, visiting Tami. Oh, also, if you want to sign up, give us your email. We'll let you know about future events and future projects, writing projects that I'm doing. Does that sound like a plan? You guys are sweet. Very good. So, part 1 was what? What does it feel like to have bipolar? Let's start, for me, with depression. I wish I'd had a lot more hypomania or mania, but I got a lot of depression. Different people, it manifests differently. In my case, depression was the major feature. So you all know stable mood, how most of you are right now, normal, baseline, whatever you want to call it. Depression could be mild, moderate, severe, and then you come up eventually. Maybe another depression. Don't think it's like what's that kind of wave that's so nice? No, it's not like that. You can have 2 or 3 depressions and then a hypomania and so on. It's not predictable, which is, as we heard in the first speech, one of the worst things. You can't plan your life. You don't know if you'll be okay to go out, to travel, whatever. So now a simulation. Do you do simulations in your classes? So just work with me, friends. I know it's weird. You're going to feel depressed at the end of this little exercise. You are sitting in a chair, but you don't have the energy that you have now. You've got depression. So you've got to slump down. Can I see you slump? Thank you. Slump. Really, really down. Come on. The depression is pushing. Now, what do your arms feel like? They are so heavy. They're just hanging down. You can't even hold them in your lap like a normal person. They're down. Can you feel how heavy they are? What are your eyes doing? You can't even keep them open. Close your eyes. Yes, I'm watching you. Close your eyes. Good. Slump your head to one side. You can't even hold it upright. And open your jaw. You can't keep your jaw closed. Let your tongue hang out if you want. Okay, I'm being silly, but seriously, that's how it feels. Your legs are like tree trunks. They're so heavy, they feel like lead. Now, in that state, I want you to think about trying to function. You cannot get up and go to school. You cannot meet your friends. You cannot even reply to a text. You are incapacitated. Does that make sense? Your eyes are closed, so don't look at me. Okay, so I'm going to read a little extract from my book now that describes how I felt about it in that state. My poor husband, he and I worked together. He was on a conference call and he needed my input. It says, I had nothing useful to say. My mouth was drained of words. They had fled and were stowed deep in the rumpled recesses of my troubled brain. I would look away from the desk, trying to find anything in the office of interest to me. Nothing. Dear God, I was so disconnected, so out of it. I just wanted to lie down. I forced myself to sit a while longer. By now, my mind had gone totally blank. I didn't even know the topic of the call anymore. Rob's voice droned on. What language was he speaking? I wondered. It might as well have been Latin. I knew I should be able to say something, to respond intelligently, but I simply could not. Before long, I got so restless and frustrated, I got up and staggered out. Rob came upstairs later to find me curled up on the bed, my back to the door, hating myself for letting him down yet again. So that kind of overwhelming inability to be myself, to function like a normal consultant in that case, was the feature of month after month after month of depression. So recently, since I published that book, I've been working on some poetry. This is a very short poem, and Tami, you're next. It's called Figment. In depression, I am a figment, a shadow of my normal self. A shadow without a shadow. A ghost. Tams. So my question to Tami, it's kind of an interview thing, is what did you, oh, you've got your own, okay. What did you and your sister Carrie, who were living at home at the time, these guys were teenagers when I got sick. So what did you and Carrie try to do to make me feel better when I was so depressed?
So there's a number of things that we did to help you. Because you were not there, you were not you. So she would stay in bed all day, couldn't come down to cook or eat with us or do anything, respond to emails. So we did all the cooking, we brought the food up to you in bed on a tray, so you had breakfast, lunch, and dinner in bed.
Well, how was my appetite?
Not there. Yeah, you didn't have any appetite.
So nice try.
Yes, we had to force feed you. We also did spa days at home, so we would give you facials and put cream on your hands. We dragged you down to the basement where we had the treadmill to force you to do some exercise. As we learned in the previous presentation, cardio gets the blood circulating and endorphins flowing. So even though you hated us for it, we forced you to get a little bit of cardio in. Likewise, we took you to some Zumba classes, and you were always like in the back row, barely moving while everybody else was doing the crazy moves. But I could see a very small lift in your, I guess we'll call it spirits.
Mood.
Yeah, so by the end of the class. So very minuscule. So it was worth forcing you to go out. It was worth the complaining and everything. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, was that we didn't guilt you into feeling the way that you were feeling. Like we didn't, we knew it was out of your control. So we never tell you to snap out of it, or like make you feel bad for not being present, not being interested in our lives anymore, or caring about us. So yeah.
Thank you. If you have questions for Tami, she'll answer them at the end as well. Thank you, Tams. That whole period is like just a blank. I see some of us are still in the depressed seat. You may now sit up, friends. But thank you so much for taking that exercise so seriously. Let's see how you do on the next one. I'm kidding. Okay. It's like a black hole. Depression is like a black hole, if you can picture that. Just a quick word about language and the language we use. I saw a little sticker somewhere there, language matters or something to that effect. In everyday life, don't we say things like, my exam is on Friday, I'm so depressed, right? Or I'm so depressed that it's going to snow on my birthday, etc., etc. Please, depression is a diagnosis. It's a psychiatric diagnosis. Say, I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm disappointed, I'm what else? Concerned, I'm worried, you name it. Choose an emotion that actually fits what you're feeling and save depression for those moments when you are really depressed. And by the way, if I'm depressed for a day or 2 or 3, is that depression? How long do I have to be down for? 2 weeks. Somebody's been teaching you guys DSM-5. Excellent. 2 weeks to qualify as a depression. Very good. So that was that. Part 1.2 is about the hypomania. So if it's bipolar type 1, you get your depression and your mania, full-blown mania, sometimes with psychosis. By the way, psychosis can come with mania and depression. A lot of people don't think about the depression with psychosis. That's type 1, which is what I have. If it's type 2, you have depression and hypomania. Excellent, which is like mania but not as severe. If I did a simulation like the one we just did for depression, what would it look like? We're not going to do it because I'll never get control of the group again. What would it look like, mania, if we all pretended to have mania right now? That sort of says it all, eh? We would be running around this room, shrieking, laughing, or shouting, whatever, depending on whether we're irritable or not. We would maybe run outside. I loved going outside. No coat, no boots, just get out there. Enjoy the day, wouldn't I? Middle of the night, I would go. I had to get out. So we can't do that. And then hallucinations for sure. I had visual hallucinations. Worst case scenario, at the end of that running around, we might need to call 911. That happened to me a couple of times. So my visual hallucinations, I just wanted to tell you the story. It was November, and I had to get out of the house to get away from these people who were irritating me. I got really irritable. They tried to calm me. They tried to be rational. Get away. Okay. So I go outside, and I sit on the front porch. And I look around. We live in Beit-Ophir. I look around the trees, the garden, and we have a park across the road. And I see all the trees are like, there's smoky, foggy mist rising from them. I think, okay, wait, is everything on fire out here? No, I wait a moment. The evergreens are, the movement of the smoke is more sedate, if you will, more mature, and it's like whites and greys and pale blues. But the deciduous trees are like happy, dancing reds and yellows and oranges coming up. It was spectacular, friends. I loved it. I stayed for a while looking, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? Go inside and tell these guys, you've got to come and see. Come outside and see. And they were floored. They knew that things had gone to another level. This was my first time with hallucinating. My poor husband was so distraught. None of them came out to look at the trees. So I was upset. Anyway, that was that. On my Instagram, we put a little poem. I mentioned that I'm writing poetry. It's very short, and Tami illustrated it beautifully with fireworks. So picture colorful fireworks around these words. Mania, high-flying, thrilling, color of fireworks, blazing in my brain. Tami! So the question this time is, what did you and your dear sister do to try and calm me down in this state?
If that was even possible. So, as you mentioned, you would get very irritable, even aggressive, and especially with my dad, Rob. You brought out the worst in each other when you were in mania. So you would fight all the time, like screaming, very dramatic, Oscar-winning performances from both of you. So we had to keep you separated from each other, and we even went so far as putting you in the guest bedroom in the basement and kind of giving you your own, almost like an apartment down there, so that you were never in the same room as him. So you hated like everyone in the family except for me when you were in mania, so I became your babysitter. Separating you from the things that brought you the most, most anger and negative emotions. We put soft music on your iPod, like Enya, to kind of get you to zone out a little bit and calm down when you were overstimulated. Rather than doing cardio exercises, we did yoga with you. So limiting any excitable experiences. We wouldn't let you go shopping on your own because overspending is a very classic symptom of mania, and luckily not for us, but many families go deeply into debt because of spending all of the savings on clothing or trips or a new car or whatever, so we monitored that very closely. We also, because you had no control over not just your emotions, but your reactions and behaviors, we couldn't let you go for walks on your own, because if you went on Lakeshore Road and ran out when a bus was coming, then you'd die. So yeah, you were never left on your own. And then similarly for driving, you couldn't drive anymore on your own because of speeding. Or if somebody, like another car, did something that upset you, you would get very upset. So we would drive with you or make you take cabs. And there was one time in particular when my sister was driving you, and I was in the car as well, and you were so overstimulated by, nothing was happening. We didn't even have loud music on or anything. And it was nighttime, it's not like there was sunlight or anything. But you were too overstimulated and you were shrieking at my sister and screaming at her and saying she was driving badly, so you put a reusable grocery bag, like a black fabric grocery bag, over your head and drove the whole way home like that for 40 minutes. And you felt like that was, you did feel like that really helped you, like it calmed you down, and also we were glad it shut you up for a little bit, so that was great. So finding ways of limiting stimulation is great. Like external stimulation, of course, we can't control what's happening in your mind, but that's a great technique. And then when it gets so bad that even though we're many siblings and we can't look after you full time on our own, we call 911, which we did a few times. And then one of the most important things was that we didn't scold you for your behavior, neither in public nor at home. Even though you were incredibly embarrassing when we would go out in public, just getting so excited like a child who can't control their behavior. So you would shriek, or you would cry, or you would just do very embarrassing things when you're an 18-year-old and your mom is humiliating you. So we never told you to stop acting like a child, because we knew that that was out of your control.
Thank you. You can't envy teenagers with a mother like that, eh? Thank you, Tams. So, in summary, in depression, we long for the relief of normal mood or even hypomania, frankly. But then we go way too high. And while we're up there, we know, is this thing working? We know that what's going to happen. What goes up must come down. And so even you can't even enjoy your relief because you know another depression is waiting around the corner. All of this was on medication. But what's the problem? It takes time to find the right doses, the right combinations. So it took us, in my case, 2 years for that to vaguely get settled. And then I was on too much for a while, and they slowly weaned me off. And now I've been on the same 2 meds for a long, long time. Stable. Okay. Oh, every episode of either high or low damages neurons permanently. So the woman you see before you now is a mere damaged version of her former self. Every episode causes permanent damage. Great reason to get into treatment as soon as you need it and to stay on it forever. I did try to wean off with under supervision. Did not work. Back into a depression within 3 weeks. So I'm resigned now. For life, I will be taking these meds with their side effects. All right, so that stability that I've now achieved is the same stability that you guys are currently taking for granted. Am I right? Maybe not all of you. Maybe some of you are consciously working to preserve your mental health. But I doubt it. I know how I was at your age. So there's this, I know, any of us parents? Okay, cool. Regard your, and those of you who not can relate, regard your mental health as a precious newborn. You have to take, it's so vulnerable. You have to take care of it as if it were a newborn. Does that work for you? Nobody else is going to take care of your newborn. You do it. Great. We're on to part 2. Perfect timing, my goodness. The things that negatively impact. Okay, we're talking about boosting our mental health immunity. It's very simple because the things that negatively impact mental health, things that cause mental illness, is just the flip side of the coin of the things, if we do the other side of it, it boosts your mental health immunity. For example, back to the previous thing, although it's on my notes, too much stress affects mental health, but stress reduction boosts your immunity. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're going to do a quick quiz about sleep. You are going to tell me how many times, well, I'm going to ask you 5 questions, And you're going to keep a track of whether you raised your hands once, twice, 3, 4, or 5 times. Question 1. I sometimes fall asleep in class. Please raise your hand if that is true. Don't be shy, friends. I sometimes fall asleep in class. Okay. So on your other hand, count 1 if you raised your hand there. Number 2, I am sometimes so tired I can't make it to the first class of the day. Okay, so if you raised your hand, add that to your previous one or whatever. Number 3, I sometimes pull an all-nighter to meet a deadline or to study. Okay, I'm seeing a trend here. And question 4, I sometimes brag about how little sleep I need or get, like it's a sign of strength. Anybody do that? Just a couple of hardcores, okay? Question 5, I sometimes lie to my friends or parents about how exhausted I really am. We're in denial. Cool. Now, please raise your hand if you said 0 times. You didn't even count 1 of them. All right. These people are at, I can say this, relatively low risk. I can't speak for your genes. You might have horrible genes. You might have some huge external stress. But as far as your sleep is concerned, high five. You're doing great. What about hands up if you raised your hand before once or twice? Okay. You guys are at risk. I want 0 on those 5 questions. So you're at risk. Do we have any who raised 3, 4, or 5 times? Okay, friends. These guys need help. You're playing with fire. It was precisely that pattern that flipped me into bipolar. I was pulling all-nighters. I was fighting this family drama. And chronically, after 5 weeks, I believe it was, bang, bang, bang. If I could go back and do it again. So playing with fire, you're at huge risk of a mental crash. It might take the form of depression, of anxiety. In my case, it was bipolar. Who knows? It could trigger schizophrenia. We don't know. Don't play with fire. Did you hear that? Don't play with fire. Having done that exercise, who is willing to at least think about your sleep patterns to protect your brain health? Oh, she's so good. She was at high risk. Please, friends, at least think critically. Talk to each other. What could we do to prevent this pattern from becoming the norm? It is not normal. And you see with your own eyes these folks in this room who are living a healthy, I use the phrase, a good dose of sleep. They're getting a good dose of sleep. Why do I use dose? Because sleep is the ultimate medication for mental health. You don't have to look down. You're in good company. Another thing is to learn to be assertive. It relates back to the sleep. So your buddies are all going out. It's the night before your big exam or 2 days before your big exam. You say what? Assert yourself and you say, no thanks, I'm not coming. I still have to study. Or, no, I'm not drinking during the week. Or whatever. Put your foot down and stand up for your own mental health. Don't be swayed. So be assertive. Sleep, be assertive. Use your body to fool your brain. The lady before was mentioning some of these things. The fake smile. Can I see some fake smiles? Bigger, bigger, bigger. Teeth. Okay. If you can't muster a smile, what did she say? Put a pencil between your teeth. It triggers the same muscles as a smile, sends the message to your brain, she's having a good day. he or she. Very good. Just standing up. I was taught this at the Douglas. When you're sitting and slumping, you're not feeling good. Literally just standing up. And they said, if you can walk to the window, I'm looking at that sun on the grass outside, it's just beautiful. Walk to the window. And when you get there, what must I do with my head? You can do it from seated. Just raise your head. Ooh, okay. So imagine you went to the front door and you're raising your head. Blue sky today. Doesn't matter, it can be snowing, I don't care. Raise your head. What does that do? The fluid in my inner ear swishes a little bit. That swish makes me feel better. Very simple yoga pose it's called the agitator. You with both hands. You just stand with legs and swing. See how my ear is going to be swirling. Get on a swing. Roll down a hill, not in the season. Whatever. Anything that gets that fluid flowing. These are the things that make us feel good. And then, of course, power pose. Have you learnt about power poses? Okay, this one you have to stand up for. Friends, let's power pose quickly. Legs are wide. Woo! Legs are wide. That was almost one, a yawn. There's two versions. Wonder Woman, hands on hips, head up, and a big smile. Think of all the wonderful things that you've done and will do. Okay? That's Wonder Woman. Otherwise, you can do the I just won the marathon, and you raise your hands above your head back, and power. Yay, I did it. And you do that. She was talking before about getting things done before an oral presentation. We were taught, go into the washroom, and nobody knows. You do your power pose in the stall. Take 3 deep breaths, and then enter the classroom. You'll kill it. Will you remember to power pose? Excellent. If we had more time, I would talk about eating healthy food, getting regular exercise. You've heard this all a million times, but did you know it's good for the brain as well? Building a strong social network, stress reduction, relaxation, meditation. I'm a big fan of it. Just go on YouTube, guided meditation on YouTube. Avoid or limit your exposure to drugs and alcohol or whatever the substance of choice is. Why? Those things affect your brain, friends. If your neurotransmitters are already going a little bit, then you don't want any addition. And finally, develop a positive outlook. That's all covered in the book, if anyone's interested. So all of those strategies can help to protect your mental health and boost immunity to mental illness. Conclusion, remember that nobody else can protect our brain. Maybe this is the best measure of adulthood. Kids think they can do whatever they want with their bodies and their brains. It'll take care of itself. No. Adults know that it's our responsibility to take care of our own brains and our livers, our pancreas, our lungs. So it's just part of being an adult. It's ours to look after. Only I can protect my own brain. Can I hear that? Only I can protect my own brain. Beautiful. And do you remember the thin line? Mental health on one side, mental illness on the other. It's so thin, friends. Please take active steps to stay on the right side of that line. Key takeaways. Number 1, back to the theme of Bell Let's Talk. Stigma, which is, we know what that is, stigmatizing mental illness, sucks. In fact, we could say stigma kills, because people with mental illnesses who should get help and deserve help sometimes hide it. They self-stigmatize, they hide it, and the next thing, you know that suicide is a huge risk. So let's talk. Let's keep it going, the conversation. Mental health is as precious and vulnerable as a newborn baby. Good. The things that negatively impact mental health and that help boost immunity against mental illness are two sides of the same coin. And who can protect your brain? Only I. Very good. Not me. Don't say you. Excellent. And friends, that brings us to our time for questions, answers, or comments. I will be here afterwards. If you're too shy to ask a question in the big group, I'll be towards the back there near where Anne is. Or, is that right, Tami? Yeah, we'll be back there. There's a sign-up sheet for the email thing that I mentioned if you want to be informed about future events and talking whatever. I should, just before we go to questions, I'll mention my next project is called Tales from Bipolar Country. Short essays by people with bipolar, by their family members or friends, and by the health professionals and others who work with us. So if you or anybody you know would like to be informed about that, please give your email to Tami and we'll send you the writer's guidelines. Just double checking. That's it. So let's go to questions. And I'm not as quick as the lady before. I'm going to wait until somebody actually asks something. Yay!
On your medications, you're on lithium. Do you experience any depression or manic episodes while on medication?
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. As I mentioned, it took them. I was on lithium within months of the illness manifesting, and it took 2 full years for me to get stabilized. So I had ups and downs on that. I was hospitalized on that. And then they added more Seroquel, atypical antipsychotics, all kinds of stuff. It was a bit of a zoo for a while. But persevere is the bottom line. Thank you for breaking the ice with the questions. Anybody else? Yes?
I would like to know how your children knew how to behave, how not to stigmatize.
I think that's a great question. I'll just repeat it. How did Tami and the other kids know not to basically stigmatize the illness? I have no idea. What a mother they must have had before she got sick. What do you think, love?
Well, we were all, like, one of my sisters was studying nursing. I think we were all very aware of mental health in general. We had our own issues with mental health and routines, so we were a bit more conscious of mental health in general. But also we could see, like, we could tell if we did tell you to write down in public when you're manic, we could see that just made things worse.
Worse, okay.
So I guess, just the feedback that we get from you, we kind of understood how to react.
So you learned from experience as well. Does that answer your question? Yes, I'll just mention the word patronize. There's one thing that drove me crazy is when I felt that they, and particularly my husband, was patronizing me. You really have to get some sleep now. Come on! You know, it's a feature. I would show him on the web. It's a feature of mania that you cannot sleep. Don't patronize me. I hate that feeling of being infantilized or whatever. So if you're ever dealing with somebody in the wards or wherever, let me just say that, we are human beings. We have our basic dignity. Even when we're crazy high, I was making notes for this book. I knew who was doing what, who was saying what. You're still a human being. please treat us as such. I'm addressing you as if you're a nurse. I'm not sure if you are, but there you go. For the nurses among us. Thank you. Yes? What were my first symptoms? Depression. I went into this family crisis that I allude to. I don't spell out the details because it involved one of the children, not Matt. When I gave up the fight of that struggle, within a couple of days, I could not get off the couch. So exactly that simulation I made you do, that's how I felt. Just unable, not sad, just no energy, could not move. Terrible. From somebody who was always energetic and whatnot. Yeah. In the book, I talk about intellectual apathy, social isolation. It affected every phase, every aspect of my life. So yeah, intellectual, social, physical. My taste buds went. My eyes, everything was grey. I didn't see the beautiful color. Unbelievable. It's really something. It affects your entire brain. My memory, I believe so. She's smiling. To this day, my memory is shot. I'll say, "Oh, we should go and see such and such a movie." She says, "We saw that together." La la la. I say, "When?" Yes, it did affect my memory. Yes. I think there was another hand here. Yes.
How did you feel when you got your diagnosis?
Oh, great question. How did I feel when I got the diagnosis? I'll never forget the day. I was at the Jewish General, and the psych finally said bipolar. Before we had thought it was situational depression. I remember walking out of his office, and I had driven myself that day, walking out, and I had to get down to the car. And I just thought, can they see? Does everybody know? Talk about self-stigma. I was shocked, ashamed, and I thought I was above this, frankly. I thought I was special. No, not one of us is special enough to beat this red line thing. So yeah, really, really shocked. And it took me a long time to get my confidence back. I worked for it. I joined an improv class. I joined Toastmasters. I joined bloody line dancing. I did everything I could to force myself to get out there again. Because before, I was just in my little bubble. Yeah, it took a lot to... If only I didn't shake, man. I saw somebody at the back, if you don't mind. Yes?
Were you able to continue to practice as a nurse after your diagnosis?
Yeah, I don't work in clinical. I'm a public health consultant. So I took about, at least those 2 years that I was unstable off. I had a disability from the psychiatrist. And then as I got my confidence back, I went back to work, and now I'm fully functioning. Yes?
Did you have any suicidal thoughts?
Oh, thank you. I should have mentioned that. Hugely, yes. There's a description in there of I imagined myself in my coffin under the ground and was never happier. Yes, suicide is a huge, huge risk. They say about 20% of people with bipolar attempt suicide. So I was one of those who... I had thoughts. I never attempted. But yes, it was a big feature for me. Thank you for raising that. Never antidepressants. Dangerous if you have the bipolar depression and they put you on antidepressants, it can trigger the mania. So luckily for me, I was not on any meds until they put me on lithium, which is the medication of choice for bipolar. Yeah, but many people do that. They go on Effexor or whatever, and next thing they know, they're manic. it triggers it. Yes?
From the time you were diagnosed to now, how did your family dynamic change from then to now?
What a wonderful question. Have you got a month? I would say to this day it has not returned to where it was before. My dear husband, he's very supportive. He dropped us off. He's going to pick us up. He's come to some sessions we've run like this before. We have Tami and him talking. But frankly, the closeness that he and I have had all our lives, we work together as well as live together, is still a little bit a wedge. I use the phrase a wedge was pushed between us by this disorder. Me screaming at him like that, it takes a toll. Or him patronizing. I've kicked him. I don't want to think about it. It's affected us. Would you agree, Tam? Yes. So we still, it's on my list of things to work on. I'm not dead yet. We have to stop this, friends, but last question. Can I do that? Yes.
I was wondering how your family managed to cope with your diagnosis and how they didn't take it personally, like maybe your behaviors, and were still able to support you in that.
I think, I'll just speak for my husband, he was relieved to hear the words. He said, yay, now we can work on this. Before we had the term bipolar, it was like, what is wrong with her? You know, she was irrational, she was not herself. Now he had a term and he could work on that. So we went for counseling, we went to Friends for Mental Health. He read a lot. He bought all kinds of workbooks and whatnot. So he really educated himself about it. Did I answer your question? Great. You guys ask amazing questions. What?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, darling. Thank you so much, Anne.
Merrill and Tami, please, on behalf of everybody here, I think you've touched us intellectually, but I think most importantly, and what will be the most lasting, is you touched us in the emotional and the human side of your
Thank you so
stories.
much.
And I think that's really greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So at the end, everybody, as Merrill said, they'll be at the back. There's also a banner if anybody wants to sign it. And thank you so much for coming out and participating in our day. Thanks very much.
Thank you.